Quick. When Bishop Kuka was talking, I started thinking about my political past and how I got into politics. I've always been involved in politics. I got into politics at the age of 10. When I was listening to Radio Biafra and Radio Nigeria during the Civil War. And I was fascinated as I listened to Radio Biafra and their justification for the war and Radio Nigeria and how they saw the war. One of the most interesting things during the war was one day I was listening to radio and Radio Biafra announced that the first Biafran had won the light heavyweight championship of the world. 10 minutes later, Radio Nigeria announced that the first Nigerian had won the light heavyweight championship of the world. Both of them claimed Big Tiger was in Nigeria, and the war was going on. And as the war went on, and I listened to the two sides of the war, I got fascinated by a man called Nkokundem, who did nothing but ridicule Nigeria while General Ichewachukwu was fighting General Obasanjo, and the rest of them were fighting on one side. Nkokundem was ridiculing them. It was like a comedy show. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody takes his voice, and that beautiful voice would never be remembered again, and the role he played. When the war was over, I went to Vice Admiral Wade, and I said, what actually happened? And he said to me, he said, one man they feared the most during the entire war was Nkokundem. He said he abused them, he ridiculed them, and Nkokundem won the propaganda war. And then, as years went by, I went to General Obasanjo. When I worked with General Obasanjo every morning, I would go to him, and instead of talking about NTA issues, every day I'd sit beside him in the morning, and I would ask him about the war. And he said to me one day, he said, Ojukwu was a brilliant man. Then he said Gowon had incredible integrity. That is how he described both of them. Unfortunately, as I listened to the two speakers, one thing is clear: we do not document our history. A lot of people do not know the history of Nigeria. Bishop Kuka talked about a book which I will buy and read about knowing about northern Nigeria, because we all need to know about each other. He raised fundamental issues about you not being able to build a church with a northern governor giving you land in the area, which is quite serious and important. But as we look at this restructuring in Nigeria, there are fundamental issues we need to look at. Let's take Lagos State, for instance. I was at the Senate the other day, and Lagos State asked for $200 million, which we approved for them to borrow from the World Bank. Yet Lagos State produces, from what I remember, Lagos State produces about 4 trillion naira in VAT revenue for Nigeria. They produce about 50% of the VAT revenue, and they keep very little of it. The rest is divided across the country. And they don't keep the money that they generate, yet they go borrow $200 million. Biafra has generated $200 billion in revenue for the federal government. Yet my people don't even live under a tree. They are poor. They have a miserable life. The island where I come from, I've never seen a car. There is no petrol station. There is no light. There is no university. Across, you see gas flaring. When you talk about the misery of the people who produce $200 billion for the federal government, 30% of all reserve is in Biafra. Brass LNG that produces a gas. There is no road between Brass and Nembe, a journey of only 30 kilometers. Yet the money they generate is used to develop other parts of the country. The people there are not asking for too much. They ask for a road, they ask for a school, they ask for a life, they ask that they have a living. When they come to Abuja and they see the billions spent, they get very angry. They get very angry because you're spending their money. Pre-1966, defeated 34. You had 4 regions, 3 regions. The regions kept 50% of the revenue they generated. They kept 50%. 25% was sent to the federal government. The other 25% was kept in a pool, and at the end of the year, it was divided evenly among the regions. Every region found a way to survive and generate income. Today, we have become a very lazy country. We depend on oil that will come to an end very soon. 4 years ago, I drove an electric car to let Nigerians know that oil would come to an end. 3 years later, after I drove my electric car, Europe is going to ban combustion engine cars. America, China, everybody's going to do the same. But guess what? The federal government of Nigeria has not issued a statement on alternative energy. So the question is not the issue of political parties. The issue we have in Nigeria today is the intelligence of the people who lead us. So the people who lead us don't have the intelligence or the knowledge to lead a country, to lead a village, and that is why we are in this problem. We should choose our leaders properly. The selection process is wrong. It is terrible. And when I got into politics, at the age of 10, I got involved in politics, listening to radio, understanding Biafra. I understand Biafra very, very well. I also understand Nigeria very, very well. I understand the 2 issues. And asked a lot of questions. One day, I asked Admiral Wade. I said, in the coup of 75, tell me exactly what happened at the Supreme Military Council meeting. He said at the Supreme Military Council meeting, the one before the one went to Kampala and the coup took place. A general raised his hand and said, Murtala Muhammad said at the meeting, Gowon, do not hand over power to civilians because Zik and Awolowo have already started fighting. Do not hand over power to them. Gowon got into a plane and went to Kampala. As soon as he went to Kampala, Murtala Muhammad overthrew the country, overthrew the government. But the minutes of the meeting were not kept as a public record. Because if you listen to the broadcast in 1975, the first reason Murtala Muhammad gave for overthrowing the government was that Gowon refused to hand over power to civilians. That was the first thing he said. But at the Supreme Military Council meeting, he said Zik and Awolowo were fighting, therefore power should not be handed over to civilians. And as long as we do not keep records and historic documents about what happens at the Supreme Military Council meeting, Federal Executive Council meeting, what do we tell our children? Leaders write books, but most of the books they write are fiction. I went to school, I went to church, I went to mosque, I became a good man, I got married, I led the country and I died. That's not a book. What are you going to learn? What are you going to learn from that? If we want to write a book, we should write the real book. Like Bishop Kuka, who is a fearless leader. He's not afraid to write a book, but then again, he doesn't have a wife. Maybe that's the reason. But he's not afraid to write the book. We should write the real book. He's given us examples of marital infidelity, but he's never been married. So we must be careful. Now, we have to write a book to understand what really happened. The first time I saw a candidate was Awolowo and Zik. And I loved them equally. The second time was in 1976 when I was a student in Iowa. I saw Gerald Ford campaign. And I was fascinated by I was a school student in Iowa, and if you look at American elections, they start in Iowa. And I was fascinated by Jimmy Carter and the candidates who ran at the time. But the first time I participated in an election was Jesse Jackson in '84. And as I crisscrossed America with Jesse Jackson, what fascinated me about his election was the fact that he used to say to me, he said, I got 3 million votes and I raised only $3-point-something million for the whole campaign. He said to me, I ran the most cost-effective campaign in the history of America, 99 cents a vote. And every time he campaigned, he would raise $10, $5, $15 to support his campaign. And I was quite excited. I said, one day I'm going to go into politics. When I got into politics, I found out you have to give the people money to vote for you. I thought they were going to give me money to run. I was wrong. That was the first mistake I made. I was terribly wrong. And Bishop Cooker, you're right. We pay to get voted into office. And that is how we have to work so hard. Really, really hard. And if I told people what I accomplished in business, it would make no difference. You would still have to pay. And that has to change. We must restructure Nigeria, because if we restructure Nigeria, we have a better life. 180 million people, politicians want to talk about the number one subject, population control. At the turn of the century, Nigeria was more populous than China, India, the United States of America. The size of Texas, we have more people. We have 60 million people without jobs. In this administration alone, 6.5 million people have lost their jobs. Crime, poverty, misery, kidnapping, vandalization, everything has gone up. We must address the fundamental issues in this country. We have no jobs. 1.5 million people want to go to university every year. Our universities can only admit maybe 500,000 people. 1 million people can go to school. We spend $1 billion every year in Ghana sending children to school. 1 billion. We spend another $1 billion sending people abroad for medical. In pre-1966, Saudi royal family came to the University of Ibadan for medical treatment. Pre-1966, before Decree 34. Now, we send everybody to Saudi Arabia, every part of the world, for medical, even just to check if you have high blood pressure. We are a country that will disintegrate, not figuratively, in real terms, unless we address the issues that sometimes we are afraid to talk about. And we must also understand something that's very important. If we don't choose our leaders properly, and we don't choose smart, intelligent people to lead us, there's very, very little we can do. And finally, the word change, I understand, is being used across the country. It's a beautiful word, a very popular word. But most people don't like change. There's only one person I know that likes change, and that's a baby who needs a diaper change. Thank you very much.
It should be restructured. I give an example. $2.5 billion is generated every year by VAT, value-added tax. Lagos State contributes over 50% of that annually. And that is being distributed across the country, yet Lagos State goes and borrows $200 million from the World Bank. It makes no sense. Biafra generates 30% of the gas and oil of Nigeria, yet the people of my village have never seen a car, there's no petrol station, living abject poverty. Now, we need to restructure Nigeria. If you don't restructure Nigeria, all we're going to do is rob Peter to pay Paul. Everybody has value. Pre-1966, 50% of the budget of the region was kept in the regions, 25% in the center, the other 25% distributed equally among the 4 regions. And everybody developed, and everybody grew their economy. You know, 50 years later, we are all lazy people depending on oil, and when there's no oil, we'll all be bankrupt. And this is unacceptable, and that is my position. Nigeria must restructure or we die. That is my position. Thank you. All right, take care.